Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our the ballet podcast. So this podcast is mainly to invite the professional guests who are, involved in the dance industry, and they will be talking with Mr. Du to give you a lot of professional advices, and that will hopefully bring value to you. So we'll bring in Mr. Du and Mr. Septime Webre from Hong Kong, and we'll start the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Septime. Good morning from Washington,
Hi, Renchow.
and I am so honored to have this opportunity to interview you on our very first podcast. And last night I was trying to think a way to introduce you in a meaningful way to everybody because everyone knows who you are, but to this particular Washington community that you were such a beloved figure. And after a while, one word kept coming to my mind is transformative. This word, transformative. And I think so much beyond just what we talk about, the current subjects. When we're looking back, Septime, from the day we met in Washington Ballet, and beyond that, and this word transformative kept coming up in my head. And here, just a couple areas that I think you are transformative as a person, and as an artist, and a director, and a choreographer. First, I wanted to say that you were transformative in the art of contemporary ballet. I believe that you were a part of the driving force that created and set the groundwork and laid the foundation for the dance vocabulary of contemporary ballet that we know today. I believe that. I believe today's contemporary ballets, including those innovative solos that we see in YGP, all embedded the DNA of your style. I feel very comfortable to say that because I sit as a jury member and I see those dancers. I was like, I have done that step in Septime's choreography.
We all steal from the people who came before us,
No, but there was a time. I believe it was late '90s. I would say even late '80s and early '90s. There was such a driving force that started by a group of young choreographers that they were thirsty. They were thirsty for new vocabularies to express themselves. They did not want to give in to the protocol of what ballet company and the ballet steps supposed to be. But at the same time, you were fanatical about clean classical lines and technique. You're absolutely fanatical about it. You never gave up any of the value that you believed. However, you were pioneer in that vocabulary today we know as contemporary ballet. So I've been working with you. I've worked with for many, many years. We worked together. You as a choreographer, as my director. But as a choreographer, you were relentless, absolutely relentless in pursuing a language to express yourself in ways that you feel was adequate, direct, and incredibly stylistic.
Well, thank you, Renchow. Those really nice words. Actually, the generations before my generation experienced the great wall between ballet and modern dance at that time. And I was interested in contemporary ideas, but I was a ballet person. And I'm part of a generation that was interested in ballet. I left ballet for a very short period of time and danced with the Merce Cunningham Dance Company. And actually I left Merce after less than a year. I respected and idolized the ideas, but the technique didn't feel good on my body. Ballet did. And ballet felt like, I was about not so much expressionism as formalism. I was interested in the structure of ballet, that dailiness of ballet, that clean clarity that only ballet can bring.
Absolutely.
But I
Absolutely.
wanted it to be relevant to the 20th and now 21st century. So yeah,
Absolutely.
and now it's a great fused world. We see so much.
Yes.
You know,
It becomes new genre, but about
yeah,
20
you
years
mentioned
ago, this
television, like,
genre
we
wasn't
see
there.
it on stage in every ballet company's repertoire, every ballet company's repertoire. We see it on social media, and especially now at this time when so many dancers are at home making really cool videos.
Yes.
We see classical ballet, but actually we really see a lot of inventiveness and creativity on the part of classical artists, and that's fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then second, transformative is in redefining the identity of the mid-sized ballet company. I thought there was a turning point in the early or mid 2000. There were a revival in the mid-sized regional ballet company that took center stage in the area of community engagement, dynamic programming, and innovative approach to fundraising. I have to say that you were and still are the absolute expert in all those areas, Septime.
Well, we had to be scrappy, that's for sure. And so you had to be all those things. But actually, the thing about mid-sized ballet companies is there's not the kind of the weight of grandeur and grand expectations that some of the big companies like American Ballet Theater have, New York City Ballet with its ties to Balanchine. A smaller company can be nimble, or a medium-sized company can be nimble, can be inventive, and in order to survive, has to be on really deep integrated part of the social fabric of the community. Without that, people don't care enough to support it. You've got to be the hometown team, and it's not enough these days just to kind of hang a sign. We're dancing next week. Come see us. We've got to be part of the everyday lives of people. And that's certainly what we were doing together, and something I continue to do here in Hong Kong.
Absolutely. And talking about that, this is the third thing is goes right into the idea. You are transformative in the culture of the city, wherever you are. And that's bigger than ballet itself. You changed way, this is very important for me, and I think I analyzed this for a while. You changed the way and the purpose of the public goes to ballet and goes to theater. For them, it was not simply going to the theater to see a ballet. It became a lifestyle for them. It was a lifestyle issue for them. What you introduced was not simply a ballet performance. It was a production. It was production of an experience. I have to say, it is an experience. It is very important word. A production of experience for them. It was just not a ballet performance. They were going to have the experience of this production. That's to me, it's a defining subject.
I think people want
to community engagement.
I think people want to connect to others. I remember we were working on a new production of Carmen, and it was just a few weeks before 9/11. After 9/11, we were in the middle of the production during 9/11, and I think our premiere was maybe 3 weeks later or something like that. And we were all so afraid that no one would come, and we sold out 2 weeks before the show. It turned out that the city needed to come together in ways that felt meaningful. And it taught me something really important about the experience. I feel like as a director, I'm designing experiences for a community to experience together. And that's certainly important.
Yes, absolutely. So you introduce an experience, a lifestyle for many of them, for the city. Speaking of community engagement, I remember one year, your birthday celebration, your birthday party was the hottest place to be that Saturday. I know you are doing the same in Hong Kong. You were transforming the ballet scene in that city as we're speaking right now. At the same time, you're cultivating, educating the public, and creating awareness of the importance of the art in people's lives. That's the impact I believe you as a figure, almost feel like as a public figure, an artistic public figure, that the impact on the quality and elevate the quality of people's lives. That's the team you were absolutely generous in so many ways to present yourself in that way to many, much beyond the dancers and students, but to the general public, you played that role very, very beautiful. And I want to thank you for it.
I'm certainly having fun what I'm doing, that's for sure.
Yes. Here, so allow me to ask you a few questions because the audience really anxious to know. First, just because I'm teacher now and involving with the young dancers, and this is a subject something you and I have talked about many times, I believe. So when you see a young dancer audition for your company, and you in your lifetime, you have probably seen hundreds, if not thousands of them. What are the essential qualities that you are looking for? And that's first question. Second, it's connected to that. What are the extra qualities that catches your eye?
About four things.
Yes.
A facility that's appropriate to the company I'm directing. So the body's got to be great and in great shape, not and great legs, great feet, appropriately proportioned. Has to fit in to the classical ideal. In Hong Kong, as in Washington D.C., we do Swan Lake and Giselle, and then the next night or the next week we might do Wayne McGregor and Justin Peck. Next week we might do a full-length ballet of mine, and then wash, rinse, repeat. And so the body's got to be great and appropriate for a diverse kind of repertoire. The training's got to be excellent. Really, really good training is super important. And so I think students who are attending your school, the Choreographic Academy, are getting that. I think a piece of advice I'd give to any young dancer: make sure they're in the right school for them, where the teacher cares about them. Don't worry about the name brand. Worry about what the classes are like and what the relationship with the teacher's like. Are they going to dig in deep with what you need? So the second thing is training. A third is dynamics. I like it. I mean, I like energy, and I feel like the 21st century is about energy in lots of ways. And so a dancer that's dynamic and going to bring a musicality, a sense of attack, a sense of presence and there-ness is the third thing that's really important. So they're not just dancing just correctly, but they infuse it with a kind of explosive energy is pretty important to me. And the fourth thing, I'll call it factor X. And
that's the one we want to know.
Can't quite put your finger on it, but you know what it is. It's a star power, a star quality. And that usually comes from an ability to personalize the moment, to take a step and make it personal, seem like they're doing saute arabesque, failli glissade, soda shop, but it looks like they invented the step because they personalized it so much. That's something that makes us sympathize with them, something that makes us feel like they're the metaphor for us. They're like the idealized us. We relate and we also admire. Factor X. So I would say those: appropriate physique to fit into the company, amazing training, some kind of intelligent approach to dynamics, and then factor X. Who doesn't love it?
Yeah, factor X. This is one thing that I think the students often have a bit of a hard time to understand, and I think it has to come from a bit of experience. But if we somehow bring that idea to the students early on, and they have much better chance to get a job and thrive in a company. And this is one thing that I'll often see in the audition. And I often say that if you can just do a little bit more than that, just a little bit more, that little bit more is, I think it's just the spirit, the factor X that you were talking about.
Yeah, and
not just within the comfort zone.
I think anyone can push 15% more than they're doing on a daily basis, pretty much. If you really put your mind at it, if you can do that every day for a sustained period of time, that's how you get to a new level. Is you do the same thing every day, you get the same results. You've got to turn up the volume a little bit to create a new plateau for yourself.
Right.
And that leads to discovering in yourself what the factor X is that you've got.
Right. That is what I have been talking about. That is what to have the company have to have you, the type of energy. You have to, it's like you audition for a role. The way you did that step, the way you did that phrase, you have to have that role. The company have to give you that role, although they wasn't planning to. But that's really great. Now, here's another question in some way relation to that. When a young dancer enter the professional environment, let's say he's or she's already hired, into the professional environment, let's say in your company, Mr. Weber, what are common mistakes you see, okay, in class, in rehearsal, and on stage? I don't even want to say common mistakes. I want to say something like, you look at this performance of the daily performance of the young dancer, something that you expected, something you thought this young dancer would know, but unfortunately, it's not happening. Yeah, the common things that it's lacking in class, rehearsal, and on stage. What are those? And what can they do to adjust quickly without a calling to a meeting in your office?
2 or 3 things. Number one, I think my experience, the most common is that they remain in student mode.
Yeah,
and there's a paradox here. There's a big paradox. The way one succeeds in ballet school as a kid and as being the good little girl, the good little boy, doing exactly what you're told, towing the line, not breaking the rules. Ours, it's like ballet's the last benevolent dictatorship. There's no independent free thought. And in the best training academies, the teachers are hyper involved in the students' technique. Of course, they should be. They're delivering information to the students. It's that transformation from receiving all the information from teachers and a lot of focus, and then moving into a company situation, often as an apprentice, low man of the totem pole, with these superstars at the principal dancer status. They've been seniors in this great school, maybe the star students of their school. And because of the star students, they're the ones that got the job first. And then suddenly they're back in the bottom status. And there's this combination of having had years of a lot of attention to very little attention. And therefore having to be self-starter, having to be self-taught, having to take the initiative. I find that transition of someone who's 17 or 18 or 19 years old going from school into a company, so often, unless they're really on top of it and they're really aware, they can spend a year or two a little lost, kind of in student mode still. Very fine in a corps de ballet. We're doing Swan Lake. I want that person's, that's the shape of that tendu in a line. But to really get down and dirty and dance, it might take a couple of years of transition of trying to figure out what it's all about. So I think the advice I'd have is you've got to be aggressive. You're at a certain point, you've got to go. Students become autodidacts, self-didactic learning, self-taught essentially. Going into professional life, you have to, most of what you learn, you figure out yourself. You listen and you filter and you intuit and you kind of figure it out. You've got to be more independent in the first years of company life than in the last years of schooling, for sure. And so I think that's the most common thing. There are other things that happen. You're living out on your own. There's the same things that happen to anyone when they're suddenly in a new environment, and they can lose discipline or lose focus.
Right.
That's a human nature. Sometimes kids that go to college, that happens to them. They're away from home, etc. But I think my biggest piece of advice would be in those last year or two of school, you've got to start thinking like an independent thinker. I actually think that I've done a lot of talking and thinking about the demographic of ballet dancers that become choreographers. And some years ago, it became very obvious to so many that most ballet choreographers are men, and women were really the exception. And I've always theorized that one of the reasons for that is that little girls have to follow the rules. There's so many girls in ballet, and they've got to toe the line and be the good little girl. And what makes you a great artist is by not being good, but by breaking the rules and being creative. And that's not what's emphasized in ballet school in our training. That individuality, generally, it is when you're coaching, but how many hours do we spend getting coached versus how many hours we spend getting taught in class? We're in class and rehearsals much more than we're coached on individual artistic ideas. And it's that part that's going to make us flourish in a ballet company setting. So the more you can earlier on start to try to be an independent thinker.
Free thinker.
Within the rules, of course.
Yes, and be intuitive of your surroundings. And I think
super,
one more.
Yeah, you gotta have your antennas up all the time.
Right. I think there's one more thing that I believe there's a breakthrough. There's always a breakthrough where the artistic director, or oftentimes when a guest choreographer comes, they see this young dancer and they saw something particular that it was interesting. And they see maybe just for 5 minutes of the fleeting moment, say, you know what? I want her to do it. I want him to do it. And as you, as a director, say, you know what? I'm going to give her or him a chance. Now, this is the moment, I believe, in the company, because not very often they are just going to pick you out of a rank and give you the opportunity. Something has to happen. Either a dancer injured, or a guest choreographer comes, or this young dancer is doing particularly well in class in the last couple of weeks. And you decided as a director, you know what? I'm going to give a second cast or even an understudy position for that young dancer. Now, this is, to me, it's a defining moment right here. And I wish that I had those moments many, many times when I was much younger in a company, but I didn't recognize that. I didn't know it. That was my moment. So I wanted you to just simply walk us through when that moment happens, what that dancer should do, the essential things that she or he should do to grab that opportunity and just run with it. Instead of after 3 days of rehearsal, you're like, nothing really happened. Or nothing really happened the way that you had hoped for.
It's so interesting. Serendipity, the act of surprises in life, happen to all of us. But usually they happen when circumstances are right. And a young dancer can create those circumstances. I think we all know from our training that we plateau and then something happens and maybe we think we don't know what it is, but we can figure it out. Leads us to, suddenly we had a good day in class, and the next day was a good day, and the next day was a good day, and we're on a roll, and a month later we're at a new level.
Right.
And then maybe 6 months goes by and it seems like it's the same thing, and then suddenly it's like a growth spurt of a 13-year-old kid over the summer.
Right. Yeah.
That idea of trying to design, I think a dancer can design for themselves a technical advancement or a period of blossoming. Psychologically, you've got to approach the studio in the right way every day, do all the things like eating, be on the right diet, all those other things. I think if you can approach usually it's when you can be consistent. So I think you can set yourself up for advancement if but you just gotta say, all right, this 6 weeks is going to be a really special 6 weeks. I'm going to get through Nutcracker holiday, January 5th. We come back. This January 5th to February 15th is a special, like, intense period for me. You can design that. No one's going to do that for you. No one does. No company has time. No direct, I've got 48 dancers. I love them all, but do I have time to go around to 48 people and have a conversation every day with 48 people? No. It's the ones that create for themselves some advancement. And there are also ballet masters who assist. And so the dancer can, you'll naturally gravitate to one artistic staff member, one teacher, one ballet master, maybe go to that person for advice. I would say all of these things come together to create moments.
Create moment. Mm-hmm.
You create moments. So for example, actually the other one, Renchad, I would think is, I would advise a young dancer who enters a company and finds they have a special relationship with one of the ballet masters or with the director, seeking advice about, like making an appointment and seeking advice to get feedback. I'm impressed by it, actually. I hope people don't do it every day, but because I don't have time for it. But I do appreciate it. It does make me think, oh, that person's really thoughtful in what their goals are. Maybe they're not any more talented than the next person, but because they're thoughtful in their goals, and I can relate to their goals, it made me think, let me just add them to the cover list, the understudy list. Right. So actually articulating some desire or goal without being too pushy.
That's a maturity issue, though. That's a maturity issue. That is something not just random. That has to be thought. That has to be planned. They have to set themselves up for the advancement. And I think this is what you just talked about. It's all a part of it. Something extra beyond just good training and following the rules.
Totally. Actually, it goes back to what I said earlier about the pitfalls of joining a company and then kind of getting lost and seeming rudderless in those first 2 years as apprentice. And whereas you've been a star in your school, but then now no one's really focused on you. A way to turn that around, one of the ways, is by finding the ally in the management scheme. Maybe the director, you got to be careful because he's not, or she's got not that much time, but it could be the director or that ballet master who seems sympathetic to you, that you click with. And I mean, probably the same thing holds true at a place like the Choreographic Academy, where some teacher or another has a special relationship, a connection. I think it's a good idea to articulate, to go and get advice. Advice is non-threatening. It's not like you're going in and saying, please, I wanted this role. Yeah. You might, in the context of that conversation, the dancer might then admit that they would like a role, it'd be okay for them to attend rehearsals. That actually also happens, and I appreciate it. In any given production, one or two dancers might come to me and say, oh, Septime, I'm not called for Romeo, but I'm not called for Giselle. Actually, just last season, someone said that the dream was Albrecht. Could they just attend? Actually, on the third day, we put him in, and he did Albrecht, and he was not scheduled to, but he was just amazing in the studio. And I didn't call him, but he asked if he could attend. So this, you have to be respectful, but I think taking the initiative, you have to direct your career, and somewhere, in some regards, you have to direct your director. You have to ensure your director, those making the decisions, know what your goals are, know that you're serious about it, know that you're responsible, know that you'll know the step the next day, like that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Very, very valuable. Very valuable. Now, I want to talk about another subject. It's called marketing. how important is the marketing aspect part of a dancer's career? I'm not talking about company. I'm talking about the dancer's career, marketing in dancer's own career. And how can our professional dancers use social media correctly, use it correctly in order to truly benefit their careers?
Well, it's certainly fun to see on Instagram or Facebook a shablam moment.
Yes. Yeah.
The shablam moments that we see. That's certainly fun, and it's helpful. Certainly, it's helpful to get your name out there. I think the decisions, as long as it doesn't get in the way of the serious act of becoming. I want to say hello to my husband, Mark. It's the act of rehearsing and performing, being a dancer cannot distract from cannot be distracted by the social media. As long as that's there, then I think it's a great thing. It's a way that you're connected with the ballet world. I don't know that it helps performances, except that if you're tackling a role, social media is a place that you can do research about that role. So it's certainly, it's certainly great for companies.
Right.
Hong Kong Ballet's had a lot of buzz in the last couple of years. We've had really great video online content. A lot of companies have had that. And so it helps the public get connected with what we're doing. Likewise, the public can connect with individual dancers that way. So I would recommend, any young dancer to get well schooled in the technology of having a great social media presence. On your break, get to know how to edit your own videos. It's just, we all have smartphones now that can do this. And so don't take it too seriously. Don't be too thirsty. But I think it's a good tool, and there's a communication with our audiences, and social media is one of the ways that we can communicate with audiences for sure.
Yeah. And you're doing that so well, and I always feel like everything you said in the social media, and I think there's a balance without being too pushy. Like I'm talking about individual, without being too pushy over selling something of yours, but somehow indirectly to infuse or advance you have your public persona of yours. And I think nowadays almost you have to have a virtual presence out there, because I think many people, the companies, before we looking about the dancers or teachers coming wants to have a teaching position in the school, I often look at their social media presence to see what's the consistency is like.
Sure. I also think that this is only going to grow. I mean, it's certainly been an important part of the world for, however long, certainly 10 years, 12 years
Right.
now.
Right.
Going on 15. But because of COVID-19, I think the whole world, and the ballet world in particular, I think we all know that we've spent a lot more time on social media in the last month. For us in Hong Kong, 2 months, 3 months almost, since January. And as a result, this facility, this ease with which we present our professional life online, that's not going to go away. We're at a new level in terms of understanding how to social media as a tool and as a way to commune with audiences. Earlier in your introduction, Ren Chao, you mentioned my emphasis on community engagement, and it comes from a conviction that while the moment of when the curtain goes up, the communication with the dancers and the audience, that's the most special communication there is, and it's an exchange of energy across over the orchestra pit. But it's not enough. It just can't. It's not enough. It's too rarefied. That moment is too rarefied in the average citizen's lives, and that ballet dancers, ballet companies need to find multiple touch points, ways of being part of society, ways that the company can be part of everyone's everyday life. And social media is super easy one. This is like the no-brainer one. And so
Right.
that's another, it's just another way we tell the world what we're doing.
Absolutely, and I absolutely agree with you that the things that spurred, created, it just last a couple months to see how our industry transformed into another new norm. The way we use technology, those things are going to stay, Septine. I absolutely agree with you. Actually, I am designing the virtual classroom curriculum, online education as we're speaking right now, because we know that people from far corner of the world are using the technology to be connected, to be educated in a meaningful way.
Sure.
And I think it is because COVID-19 forced people to channel in those extra areas to be connected, to learn. And I think that part, the dance world, as often we do, that adapt that very quickly. Just like after the financial crisis, the product of pre-professional training, the studio company, those products came from the financial crisis. It was inventive way of keep company afloat. But
Sure.
those aspects the company kept, and they were flourishing at this moment.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, we are definitely in preparation for the stay of this virtual classroom. Thank you for Septime for articulate that. I want to talk a little bit about you as an choreographer, Septime. Absolutely incredible. I want to ask you if you can share some of your secrets or advice to our dancers and students even that are interested in creating and composition. So one of the questions I want to ask, which is you do so beautifully, what do you do to formulate your ideas into a phrase that the dancers can understand and reproduce? So we all have ideas, right? We all have, when we hear the music, we see movements. But you have a way to enforce that idea, to drill the idea into the dancer's body, that relentlessly, that reproduction of the movement has to fit with your vision. You didn't take any other way you didn't take any other watered down version. You know exactly what you wanted. And I think this is why your ballet has such a distinctive style, and how you create, how you design. And formulation is very important. How do you formulate the idea and drill the idea into the dancers and not cave in to dancers? Let's do this. You say, okay, let's do that. No, you didn't do that. You say, no, well, that's a good idea, but that persistence is what I think is special. Can you share some of that with us? Especially, we have some students and dancers are interested in composition. I think this is where they fall back.
I think there's like 4 different points to make for me.
Yes.
One, and they're all go back to advice for young dancers who might be interested in choreographing. In the ballet world, we just don't really have a fully evolved training system for choreographers. We don't have really any. In contemporary dance, a lot of universities have composition classes, but in ballet, we have our own eyes, our own bodies. I learned about structure. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, big university with not very much professional dance coming through. Ballet Austin at that time was a small little regional company, and wasn't even a professional company yet. Maybe once a year, American Ballet Theater would come through or something like that. And I went to the library and I watched actually it was not even DVD, it was the old videotapes of George Balanchine's The Four Temperaments, probably 30 times. And it was a very old video of Jacques d'Amboise explaining, talking about it, or Eddie Villela. Eddie Villela was explaining the theme and variations concept and explaining how the music changed, etc. And each section, you watch each section. And then I watched that finale after Choleric and the structure of the stage. I watched it about 30 times. That's how I learned to maneuver groups. It was really by watching repertoire. And it was, and then I learned to make movement by just grabbing my friends, going to the studio, having some music that I thought was cool, and making ballets with no purpose, except just like, let's create dances together and find some way to do it. So those two things set me up. One was and I started to go see ballet. I mean, we all go to ballets and we all look at the dancers. We want to see, and the piqué turns. Is the girl flexing her foot when she piqués, or is it really pointed? You know, all the stuff we can dissect technically. I stopped doing that. I mean, I still do that, of course, but I started to really watch ballet as a choreographer, like the structure, the choices that the choreographers made. So I looked at dance through that lens, and I still do. I do both. You know, I can multitask, as they say. And then the other one is I just went to the studio and started to develop a vocabulary. And with friends that just were in the company, you know, with the American system has this long layoff period, and I was living in New York, and we would take class from David Howard, and then we'd stay in the studio for an hour or two afterwards and just make up dances. I would advise dancers to do those two things: watch and do.
Study.
Those two things, watch and do. After about some of the steps, the qualities that were in the very first ballet I did, you know, 30 years ago, are still appear in the work today. The vocabulary was personalized to me, but it's classical ballet. It was, you know, a contemporary. You've got to be a good classical ballet dancer to dance my work. Honestly, you know, I'm just interested in the line and the technique. Those are two factors, Ren Chao. A third thing I would mention is over time, I started to trust myself more, to trust the dancer more. So I would come in quite prepared initially in my early years. And over time, in part because I didn't have time as an artistic director, your life is crazy. And I didn't have the time to prepare that much. And secondly, particularly at Washington Ballet and now at Hong Kong Ballet, I choreographed in an environment where I was always also the director. And so I knew the dancers very well, and I learned to trust them and collaborate with them. So I started to come into the studio less and less prepared with steps, because I knew together we could have a special sauce. So that I can only do after going through a process of many years of a lot of preparations, a lot of developing my own personal way. The fourth thing I'll say is that over time, I like to live life. I'd like to think that what we do is metaphorical. What we do as dancers is metaphorical. We're a metaphor for the audience that is watching us. We're showing them a heightened version of themselves. We're like the skinny mirror of them. We can jump higher, we can dance more, we can turn more, we're skinnier, we look great, we're more prettier, but we're them. We're the same as the audience. We're showing them how amazing they are. You know, we're the metaphor for them. And so I want also, I find the work has become more virtuosic over time. There's just more technique in it now than there was even 10 years ago. You know, I asked Dan, it's fun to play with the technique we work on every day. So I like dancers to be pushed to the limit, because that's just why we're doing it. But also it's a metaphor for living life. You know, when when fouette turns were invented for Odile in the 19th century, it wasn't just because it was entertaining to the audience. It is, but it's not there for that purpose. It's there to express how powerful she was, a character she is, and how she didn't need a man to support her. She was like raw power and glamour. And that's why fouettes are there. Likewise, in the ballets now, I've learned to incorporate virtuosity and try to make it part of the character development, or something make a statement about the piece, about whatever I'm trying to say. These days, I'm doing only narrative work, so it's usually about the character or the storytelling. But I do like to find ways to challenge dancers' technique. Because it has this metaphorical quality, and it has the secondary benefit of kind of giving dancers something challenging to work on, and it's You know, it's like going through fire. You're stronger at the end of going through fire if you've gone through the fire.
Sure, sure. Absolutely. Wonderful. Here we talk about a little bit about the days that we are experiencing now.
Sure.
That you were isolated and quarantined a month or two before us, right? Since
Sure. Yeah.
January.
Actually, it started here in late January. We were off for the Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, and
Right.
we were due back on January 30th, and it hit right just before that.
What here is about our industry? What are the changes that you are anticipating with the dance industry after the pandemic, let's say, has subsided? What do you think the new norm is going to be after this pandemic is over? The impact on the dance industry. What are the changes you're anticipating that's going to happen? And in the meantime, what are the things that dancers can do today, now, to prepare themselves for the new norm? Because it's uncharted territory for all of us.
Sure. I think, like anything in life, you get the good with the bad. And getting through this, there are lots of negative things. A lot of ballet companies are struggling financially. So that in turn, dancers are struggling financially. That's just a fact. We've lost performances. Our careers are very short. And so to lose, companies 6 months worth, we haven't performed since Nutcracker. We closed December 27th. Our first show is not scheduled till sometime in the future, and so to lose that big gap of time of your career, that's also negative. At the same time, we appreciate what we do and our colleagues and the dailiness of what we're committed to much more than we did 6 months ago. We took life for granted in ways we do not now. That's a positive. So what dancers can do is figure out what that means to them and how they can be better artists, better people, live their best lives, be their fully realized selves in a stronger way because they've had these months of reflection and it's been taken from us, this time together. We all appreciate each other more. We just do. We miss it. And I think the directors appreciate the dancers more because I'm in awe of our dancers' commitment. The company's been doing daily Zoom class, about a 50-minute bar and some center practice, like tendus and adagio, that's it, in their apartments on Zoom every day, 5 days a week. And then we usually do a 30-minute core and workout. But the good news is actually we went back to work yesterday. And I started to choreograph a new work with the company, and it was it's like Christmas. It's so much fun to be back together because we just appreciate it. It's not any different than 6 months ago. It's always fun to be a dancer, always fun to be in the studio, but we cherish it now better. So that's a part of the new normal, and we need, as a community, as a group, as a family, international, global ballet family, to try to hang on to that specialness. We can't hang on to this forever, but we should try to keep it. The second thing is, we talked about it already. Companies are looking to figure out how social media and how to deliver content electronically. And in lots of ways, dancers who are younger than we are, Ren Chao, and more media savvy and more technologically savvy, are sometimes doing a better job than the companies are. I think some of the dancers are doing, because they have skills that some of the management don't have. So I would say another piece of advice is train yourself. Really, it's really a good thing, and because it's inescapable. Ballet does not just exist in a theater anymore. It doesn't. That is a new normal, is that it's not just in the theater anymore. There was even the last 10 years of social media. The social media has not really been content. not very little, not much content, mostly marketing and promotion. What's different now is there's actually content. And so a dancer who can, who's smart and can be part of the content manufacturing, producing of content, that's someone's gonna have a big advantage.
That's beautiful. What was the like, Septime, when I cannot believe, a lot of students are missing because Choreographic Academy is a boarding school.
Sure.
It's a second home for many students. So that day when I told them that everybody have to go home, and I had no heart to tell them that you're probably not going to come back for a long time. I just didn't have the heart to tell them. But people they will do anything to go back. They will wear a mask to do anything to go back. And the separation creates appreciation. So now I want to ask you, what was that like yesterday when everybody finally in the studio? Was there a pent up energy? What was it like? I mean, it got to be emotional, right?
We did it just so as not to have overcrowding the studio. Hong Kong is very slow. We still have a lot of social distancing restrictions in Hong Kong.
Sure.
And the vast majority, I think probably 90% of the people wear masks on the street. Virtually everyone. And we have a heightened hygiene protocol just to be really super safe. So we split class. So we did multiple classes, so the classes weren't too full. And oh my God, it was so fantastic. It was just great. It was like family reunion. Really, we hadn't seen each other since January, and but we'd seen each other every day on Zoom. There've been a lot of, and doing social media projects and remotely. So no, it was terrific, and actually started creating a new ballet, and that's the best way to bond. It's like you're inventing new stuff together. It's new and fresh, and
tell us a little bit about the new project, Septime. Tell us a little bit about it.
I'm having such a fun time. Probably, I grew up in a generation of ballet artists where serious choreographers were really not making narrative work, especially in America. We had Balanchine and we had Cunningham, and the ballet companies always did the full, narrative work like Swan Lake and Giselle and Beautiful Nutcrackers. But serious choreographers were really doing abstract work. That's the generation I grew up in. But my natural language came forth as a director in making narrative, and that's really pretty much all I do is original.
Because you're a storyteller. That's all. All. Something. You're such a good storyteller. Even in your contemporary work, you always told a story. It was never just abstract.
Actually, I wrote my first play when I was 10 years old. My sister was 8. And so it's just been there the whole time. But I wanted to make a ballet about Hong Kong, and it's my new home. And I'm doing actually a new Romeo. The company needed a new Romeo and Juliet, and so I'm actually doing a new Romeo and Juliet set in Hong Kong in the early 1960s, kind of like a Hong Kong West Side Story, with Romeo and Juliet from two of the tycoon families, and Tybalt being a gangster. And actually next week, all of the men in the company begin martial arts training. The 3 big fights, the big street fight and the second act fights will all be rendered, instead of fencing, actually martial arts training. And a lot of the dancers
just like you put us through the fencing training when we were doing Romeo and Juliet. You had hired an expert fencing. All men was like in the bare chest in the parking lot and tried to kill each other. Remember that?
It's true. Actually, there's so many good memories, Wen Chao, because this is not my first Romeo. The Romeo I created so long ago, you were actually the first cast Romeo with beautiful Michelle Jimenez. I have an old video that I'm referring to.
It was an unbelievable moment of my life.
I'm doing almost all new choreography, but I'm keeping the balcony pot that we worked on together, which is actually hard as hell, and the crypt scene. And
my back certainly felt, my back twitched a little bit when you just mentioned about it. My back just.
Seriously, no, it's hard. That's another thing about choreography I want to make. You asked about choreography earlier. This comment is both related to your questioning about transition from student to professional dancer, and about starting to choreograph. The fact is, in the last 20 years especially, the choreography, especially in partnering, contemporary ballet partnering, is so much more complex than anything you get in classical partnering class. The technique has advanced in certainly the last 30 years, but
it's incredible.
It's and that is a really it really takes a while for young women or young men coming into the company to even know what they're really doing.
I mean, we teach partnering class. There's no way our partnering class can prepare students for the type of partnering work you're talking about. And I try to tell this to them every single day. It's about relationship, about intuition with your body, with other person's body. But that is going to take a ballet to do it, not a class.
You learn it in repertoire.
Ballet to do it.
It's true. You know, what you mentioned me my kind of contemporary ballet credentials. Actually, I did join the Merce Cunningham Dance Company, you know, for less than a year when I was in my mid-20s. I had never had a modern dance class until I joined that company. I learned it in repertoire. It was in dancing.
In repertoire.
In repertoire. So finding opportunities for dancers to be comfortable partnering is really important. That's important.
You know, I was talking to Jennifer Paulo Yucan
the
other day. We were just typing on internet, and we asked right after we asked each other how we're doing and everything, because we haven't seen each other in years. And we both just talked at the same time. Do you remember the drum pas de deux from Juanita Alicia? That was a subject came up after how are you? What have you been doing? That's the second question. You remember the drum pas de deux?
It was hard.
And I remember the very first couple of rehearsals. And one, like a second rehearsal, it was just, you talk about pushing the envelope. And for me at that time, I did a lot of partnering work at that time. I was not a student at that time.
Sure.
When I was starting we work on the pas de deux together. And you say to me and Jennifer, you just like, you guys, I'm going to give you a little time to digest the idea that what I just talked about. It was a vision. It was more than just, okay, you put your hand here. Why don't you put your hand here? It was more than that. It was a vision. It was a elusive but tangible, workable. And you say, you know what? You left me and Jennifer with the ballet master John. You said, you guys figure it out. I'm gonna go do my work. I'm gonna come back in 30 minutes. Basically, I need to see something. And it is that kind of, but that posture itself, you cornered dancers, right? You cornered. When you're being cornered, guess what? You have nowhere to back up. You start going up. That's when the artistry, that's when capability, that's what innovation moves up. Because you have nowhere to go. Sure. Because when you come back, you want to see something.
Sure.
So that pas de deux itself, and I looked at the tape just a few months ago. It was incredible, and I just look at the person. I was like, I cannot believe we did all that. I cannot believe we did.
We started that. Actually, that was our first probably day working.
Yes.
We started on that pas de deux. Yeah. For those who are listening to this program, Ren Chao was one of the finest partners. A beautiful classical artist, but also finest sensitive partners that I ever worked with. And I do remember pushing you and Jennifer. And it was the result was pretty outrageous. It was amazing. Yeah. Actually, in fact, I'm restaging that ballet or part of the ballet and here in Hong Kong for the Academy of Performing Arts this summer. And actually, I eliminated that product that was just too hard for students.
It's too hard for the students. And but again, when your body gone through that, when your body and the mind gone through that sort of limitation, so you thought you had a limitation, but you know what? That was not your limitation. Soon you found out after the performance, after all it's over, you look back, you realize you had a lot more to offer.
Sure.
So this is really a development part. Talk about transformative, and I certainly felt me as was a dancer and as an educator, and now sort of an administrator, artistic administrator at this moment. And I do feel in my daily work, I mirrored a lot of my sentiments to the things that learned from or experienced working together from you. That is absolutely the truth. And one thing that I also I have to mention, out of all this, out of the dissect ways after the analyzation, evaluation, assessment of what we're doing, everything else, and something comes down to is good old hard work.
Oh yeah.
You are the one of the, not one of the hardest worker I know in my career. Can you talk us about that? Just good old hard work. I used to see you when I drive to the parking lot, you're already there. When I leave, you're still there. And if you had a left company, you were doing work. Work never left you. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it comes down to it, your work ethic, just good old hard work plays a major role, talent or no talent.
I think three things about that. First is Merce Cunningham said, you shouldn't be a dancer if you don't like the dailiness of it. Like just get, and the dedication that you have to go to ballet school, I just applied to the rest of life. The second is I come from a very big family. We're 8 brothers and 1 sister. And our parents expected us to go become professionals of some sort, a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, something like that. And most of my brothers and my sister did those things. And it turns out I had a really good career, but in my youth, when I told them I was not going to go to law school, but become a dancer and move to New York, they were shocked. And something inside of me needed to prove that what I was doing was just as valid and I could have just the same kind of success as my sister who's an attorney. And something inside of me just drove me, maybe because I was taking the path, the unorthodox path that was not, I was the 7th son. If I'd been the 1st or 2nd, my parents probably would have stopped me. But because I was the 7th, they were exhausted. So I was able to. But that's the second thing that does it. And the third thing is I'm doing something I love. Really, I'm doing something I love. And and that fuels. Actually, there's another thing too. Because you dance for me, I want everyone to work ridiculously hard, but I don't want anyone to work harder than I work. So I felt that I was going to have high expectations of the artists. I had to have a higher expectation of myself. And that's just something that I got into the habit of doing, and that's what I do.
Actually, these little things. I remember one year we're having this big gala, one of yours, the huge, extravagant, huge gala. And I always danced. I never really, get dressed and go to the audience. I always danced. So I was in my dressing room with, I think it was Michelle. We were there, just get ready and then you came to our dressing room to say hello and I make sure everything's ready. And you asked for a bag of ice. And you said you had to twist your ankle. Your ankle was actually very swollen in the rehearsal, just a few hours prior to arrive there. And you put your ice on it, and then after you said, "Oh, I'm gonna go dance. I have to dance. I have to go." And I was like, "You can do it. You spring on, look at your ankle." And you look at me, and I remember that moment to this day. Very calmly, you said, "Rin Chao, that's my job." It was like you were astonished that like I tell you not to do it. And then looking down, we were up and we're looking down. You were on the dance floor, and you were dancing with the patrons, with the donor, and you were, of course, you were leader. You were the host of the party. Of course, you cannot just let your swollen ankle. But I know you were in pain because I saw the ankle, and then you looked at me, almost outraged to set the fact you're not going to do this, and it was those moments. It's astonishing, and anybody would have just like, I can't do this.
A little ice and 3 leaves,
Yeah. Well, I fantastic, Septime. I just because this virtual capability that I feel like I always know what you are doing, and I just wanted to tell you that from personal point of view that the impact you had on me, and as a dancer and as a choreographer, and more importantly as a artistic administrator at this moment. I want to personally tell you that I'm very thankful, and I think you came in the very critical moment of my career where I could have just stay where I am and I was comfortable and I did all that what I was supposed to do, what a company expected. But you came to my career in a very critical time. Then I want to say thankful. I'm thankful for this because you pushed me upward in all directions, in all aspects of it. And I feel like you have done that to many people. And at the time, seems that actually it's impossible. There was some impossible days. But just like we will talk about when we go to the other end, you will never truly understand the process unless you experience it. So I feel I am privileged. The fact I worked for you for 10 years. And the things I learned in that 10 years is tremendous. And also, and I'm saying that on behalf of many people. Yeah, so that's individually, personally. And also the impact, we talk about this, you had on the community itself. So I urging people, the young people, try to be administrator, try to be leader, to learn what you have set in front of us, to be a community leader in the face of artistic director. So this is what I think that important for any leader, any people in the leadership, especially in today's environment that we have right now.
Well, I appreciate all that, Renchao. Those are amazing 10 years, and that was 20 years ago that we started. and it was two memories. One is dancing at your wedding. You're in Erin's wedding. Of course, your wife, Erin, I've known since she was about 9 years old. And so, such a close friend. And but also, as you were talking, I was thinking one of the things that is special about the kind of job I have as a director and as a choreographer, individual dancers leave their DNA in my body of work, and in not just my body of work, but in my vocabulary, in the way I work. You created Romeo, or were part of that, and now I'm 20 years later doing a new production, but your stamp is all over it. How I view the ballet and the role is informed by your elegance, your fine partnering. You're a storyteller, but you also really excelled at, you were an amazing part of the Suzanne Farrell Ballet, that you excelled in those Balanchine Prince roles that are abstract, but have a theatrical context. And that's part of what's in my storytelling, in part because of what you started, actually I was looking at my Cinderella just about 2 days ago.
Another hard ballet
together, two projects together with you, me, and Michelle. So I think your stamp is beautiful to have the DNA to leave. As a dancer, one leaves their DNA, like fingerprints all over it, and your fingerprints are all over me, Renchao. I gotta say.
Thank you, and I thank you for it. Erin just walked by that she want to make sure for me to express the fact or courtship happened through work, and you were a matchmaker in a sense, the matchmaker plus wedding planner. So this is how I
was a wedding planner. That is true.
Yes, you were the wedding planner of my wedding. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Septime, I think this is beautiful moment, and I shall cherish, and I think all young dancers will appreciate the very frank, the invaluable advice that you have taught in this segment.
Well, it's been fun to chat with you. Really great to catch up, and really good luck. And to all the dancers who are listening and watching right now, just keep. I know it's a tough moment, but it will pass. And the way you feel right now about ballet, keep that. keep that going and let it motivate you when you get back into the studio. It'll happen before you know it. I mean, it's happening already in Hong Kong.
It's
So
already
it'll happen
happening.
in the rest of the world soon, I hope.
Thank you so much, Septime. Fantastic interview. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Thank you,
Great.
Mr. Septime. One question: how can the audience reach you in social media?
I'm Septime Webre in Instagram, Facebook, and find me all over the place.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's been such a privilege. Even me, as a marketing team, you're very observant in the social media world, and everything that you said is correct. Like tell a story and produce the content personally, so that they can actually communicate with the audience, and that's very important. Thank you
Sure.
for sharing that. Yes.
Great pleasure.
Yes. With that, we'll end this show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Everybody's grateful for your, meaningful advice, and we hope to see you again, maybe in near future. Okay. All right. Thank you
Have a
very much.
great
Thank you,
day,
Septime.
everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Nice.